Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in once again to Queen Ahmadiyyah TV presents The Root of All Evil. As you're coming in, please feel free to go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Be sure to click the notification bell and click the word all so that you're notified each time that I go live. So tonight, I'm going to be talking about Fred Tokars, who hired someone to kill his wife, Sara. Okay? So let's get ready to get into it. Hello, Yvette, October Opal, KK504. All right, don't need a man stop telling me I do. Yvette, Misfits, One Who Cares, Louise, Kathy B, AV the Great, Kenla, Cherokee Descendant King, Flow Records, Susan, Yanita, and Brother Sly. Thank you all for tuning in. So let's go ahead and get it started. Now, make sure that you subscribe to this channel if you have not done so. Also, make sure that you like and share the video. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at QueenAShakur, on Instagram at divine_goddess_27, on Twitter at dgoddess27, and Brighton and Patreon at QueenAhmadiyyah. Okay, so let's get into it, people. Let's get into it. Now, Fred Tokars was a former prosecutor. His wife, Sara Tokars, was a Marietta homemaker, and she was actually killed in front of her two young children in Marietta, Georgia. Okay, so Eddie Lawrence and Tuesday Rower were indicted on murder charges in the death of Sara Tokars, and a federal grand jury indicted Fred Tokars as well. Now, Eddie Lawrence pled guilty to the murder of Sara Tokars. Fred Tokars was convicted, and he was convicted for the death of his wife, Sara. Now, Fred Tokars was an unlikely criminal. As a one-time prosecutor and a current defense attorney at the time, he had seen both sides of the legal process. But he also knew what happened to those who were convicted of such heinous crimes. I guess that didn't stop him from giving his a go, right? So yet Tokars faced with exposure of exactly what he was, which was a felon, and many nefarious acts that he was engaging in. Well, his wife had threatened to tell some of these things, and I guess that's why he wanted to get rid of her. Not only to mention that, he had all of this money, and he didn't want her taking any of it. Now, Sara Tokars also knew about him cheating on her and lying, all the infidelity. She knew about his foreign bank accounts and his shady business dealings with unsavory characters, some say drug dealers and things of that nature. She did not know that almost $2 million in life insurance, however, that Fred Tokars had taken out on her. Now, that's what she didn't know. The fact that maybe if she had known that, she would have been, more likely to have thought maybe he'd do something to get her out of the way, especially with the information that she had on him. Fred died in prison. Yes, he absolutely did. Now, so Sara also knew something was amiss, however, and she began to make copies of incriminating evidence, which she gave to her sister, whom she also had told about her suspicions. Now, she was returning home from a Thanksgiving visit from her with her mom and dad in Florida when Curtis Rower kidnapped her and her two sons, Ricky and Mikey, and after forcing the three of them into the Tokars van, Rower made Sara drive for a mile and then blasted her in the head with a sawed-off shotgun right in front of her two children. Initially, the crime appeared to be a robbery gone bad, but as the case developed and the investigation started, the police realized something much more sinister was afoot. Investigators quickly found a real estate developer, Eddie Lawrence, with whom Fred Tokars had a business connection. It was through Lawrence that they found out exactly who the shooter was, and that was Curtis Rower. So this is all such a tangled web, right? Such a tangled web. Now let's talk about some of Fred's business dealings that he was doing with these unsavory characters. So this case involves drugs, money laundering, torture, kidnapping, and murder for hire. The case is best explained when divided into sections as the narcotics, money laundering enterprise, and the murder of Sara Tokars. Okay? Yes, absolutely, Louise. Demons, no less. Now, at the trial, Jesse Ferguson testified that he and Julius Klein were drug dealers in Detroit, Michigan. And in July of 1985, Ferguson had moved to Atlanta, Georgia, where he met Mason. Klein also moved to Atlanta, And he and Ferguson invested $75,000 in drug proceeds to a VIP club. Now, Mason was the manager of the club, and he was listed as an owner in order to obtain a liquor license because Klein and Ferguson were in trouble with the authorities in Detroit. Likely they were convicted felons or they just had warrants or something like that, so they couldn't get the liquor license. So he was the front man. Now, Ferguson testified that Klein's principal source of cocaine was Andrew. Klein transported the cocaine from Miami, Florida to Atlanta. Then Andre Willis testified that he obtained cocaine from Klein until Klein was murdered on July 25th of 1992. Willis distributed the cocaine in Atlanta and Chattanooga, Tennessee. According to Willis, Klein also obtained cocaine from Al Brown, who was part of the owner of the Diamonds and Pearls nightclub in Detroit. Now, Willis testified that he and Klein received and sold approximately 20 kilograms of cocaine each week. According to Willis, Klein described his relationship with Mason as follows. He said Mason was just a front for the nightclubs because Ferguson and himself had criminal records, and they could not get any liquor licenses in their names. So James Mason would be in front of the nightclubs. Now, according to Willis, Klein owned several clubs, including the VIP, a club called Trax, the Parrot, and Zazu's, as well as the Park Place Beauty Salon. Marvin Baynard met with Tokars in late 1986 to discuss providing a legal defense to drug runner Dexter Askew. Now, Askew had been charged with possession of cocaine, but had been provided by Baynard. Now, Baynard informed Tokars that he sold 1/4 to 1/2 of a kilo of the cocaine each week, amounting to between $5,000 to $10,000. So Tokars requested a $10,000 retainer fee and said that he would help Baynard legitimize himself by incorporating Baynard's business. Now, Tokars incorporated a business which Baynard used with Alex Yancey, Baynard's associate in the cocaine business. So clearly he was helping them to money launder. That's what he was doing. Now, Baynard sold drugs from 1986 to 1989 and obtained cocaine from Klein and Greg Johnson beginning in 1987. Baynard recalled that Tokars had often discussed offshore bank accounts and had a blue book that explained how to set up an offshore bank for $15,000. Baynard did not invest his money. He didn't invest his drug money, but instead kept it as cash or in cash in his bedroom. And on Tokars' advice, kept the cocaine in another apartment under a different name. Baynard testified that he introduced Johnson to Tokars so that Tokars could launder some of Johnson's drug money. Let me tell you something. So he's sitting there not only helping them to launder money, but telling them how to handle their stash. Okay? We wasn't playing straight criminals. Anyway, yeah, he's clearly telling them how to stash their drugs and money. Okay? Brother Sly said dope boys. Absolutely. Hello, Felicia, beloved. Namaste. So with that all being said, another episode of When Murder Comes to Town, Homestyle Homicide. Says Davida. I am so through with you. Okay, so anyway, Murray Silver first met Tokars when Tokars was an assistant district attorney. Now, after leaving the district attorney's office, Tokars shared office space with Silver from approximately July of 1986 to October of 1989. Silver recalled a conversation with Tokars about a booklet Tokars authored entitled Tax Havens and Offshore Investment Opportunities. Now, the booklet detailed Tokars' plan for laundering drug money. Excuse me, who writes that in a book? I'm saying that's real crazy. And he was an attorney. Tokars asked that Silver refer some of his clients to Tokars. Tokars said that he was not worried about the Internal Revenue Service, i.e. the IRS, because he intended to leave no paper trail. Tokars told Silver that he had used this process to help a client who was going through a divorce He'd helped them hide $150,000 from their wife and the IRS by depositing it in his bank in the Bahamas. Now, Silver recalled that Tokars lectured to law enforcement officials on the topic of money laundering. The director of the Georgia Police Academy testified that Tokars taught courses in money laundering for the academy as well as for the Federal Law Enforcement Training Academy. Now, in late December of 1988, Mason, Klein, and Ferguson accused Michael Jones of stealing money from Mason's home. Jones testified that he went to Mason's home where Klein closed and locked the door. Ferguson placed a 9mm handgun on the table and asked Jones whether he knew where the money was or not. Ferguson then placed the handgun down Johnson's throat and threatened to kill him. When Mason returned home, Jones recounted the meeting to him. About 30 days later, Mason asked Jones to meet him at the Park Place Salon. Mason then asked Jones to accompany him home. Now, Ferguson arrived at Mason's home and instructed Mason to leave. Mason left, and Ferguson proceeded to physically torture Jones for 2 to 3 hours. Ferguson then put Jones in the bathroom, but he escaped. He then testified that he and Klein would often keep large amounts of drug money at Mason's home. Mason told Ferguson that he thought that Jones had stolen the money. Now, Mason hired a private investigator who observed Jones attempting to purchase fur coats and a new car. So he's just out here balling out of control. How stupid could he be? Now, he's stolen their money and he's out here buying fur coats and cars. Clearly, they're going to figure it out. So Ferguson testified that he instructed Mason to get Jones to the house. Mason and Klein, together with Jim Killeen, Bill Frazier, and William Kohler, formed Zebra Incorporated. They also formed Zebra Management Incorporated to operate a club called Dominique's. Now, Mason and Klein contributed $20,000 to the operation, but they were later removed from Zebras due to Klein's reputation as a drug dealer. Mason and Klein then opened Trax, Traxx. Ferguson testified that he invested $15,000 in Trax and that Klein invested $45,000. Mark McDougall, who had taken cocaine from Mason, testified that he and Zane Carroll discussed with Tokars their proposed investment in the Parrot nightclub. Now, McDougall and Carroll, who at the time owned 51% of the club. Billy Carter, who he was supposed to obtain the liquor license due to McDougall's felony conviction. Tokars and Carter discussed in McDougall's presence that Klein was the silent partner and the money man for Mason. Tokars incorporated the Parrot Acquisition Corporation. Now, the shareholder and management agreement reflected Tokars as the nightclub's attorney and Carter and Mason as subscribing to $40,000 and $60,000 shares of stock, respectively. Ferguson testified that Klein invested $40,000 to $60,000 in Parrot when McDougall and Carroll were not pleased with the investment return. McDougall threatened Klein with the gun. So Linda Campbell, who was employed at the Park Place Salon, was assaulted by Mason. Now, she employed an attorney and filed a suit against him, and her case was settled for $17,500. Of which Mason's shares of stock in the Parrot were pledged as collateral. Campbell's attorney testified that Tokars represented Mason and that it was Tokars' idea to pledge the Parrot stock. Campbell employed new counsel who demanded that the stock be assigned to Campbell because Mason had defaulted on his payments. Tokars claimed that he was no longer the secretary of the corporation, and so a suit was filed against all of the officers and shareholders, including Tokars, Mason, Klein, Carter, and Brown. Now, after Zebra Incorporated was evicted from Dominique's for non-payment of rents, Mason approached Douglas McKendrick, claiming that he had an endorsement contract with Deion Sanders. Now, Sanders testified that he met Mason through Willie Harris. Sanders signed an agreement with Harris, who signed as president of Atlanta Entertainment Management Incorporated. Now, in September of 1990, Tokars incorporated Atlanta Entertainment Management Incorporated, listing Mason, Klein, and Harris as the directors. Tokars helped finalize the deal with Sanders and the management agreement with McKendrick. Carl Tatum, an employee of the club Dion, testified that he discussed with Mason the fact that Klein was a cocaine dealer and that Mason knew that Klein dealt drugs. Now, so at the end of the day, as you can see just from what I've read thus far, that Lee Harp says, say what? You can tell that he was engaged in a lot of nefarious activities, dealing with these drug dealers, laundering money, opening offshore accounts to hide things and all of that. And in fact, teaching them how to not keep your drugs and money in the same place. Saying keep your money over here and your drugs over here in another apartment under another name. So now let's talk about the murder of his wife, Sara. Now, during a political fundraiser reception, Tokars stated that his wife, Sara, had recently been in the office working on his accounts receivable. Sara Sutler, the Tokars' neighbor, testified that Sara had often discussed divorcing Fred because she was afraid that she would not get custody of their two sons because of all his money. She knew that she couldn't afford the high-priced attorneys that he would be able to have. And by the fact that he was an attorney himself, of course, he was much more legal savvy than she was. So in the fall of 1992, Sutler said that Sara was elated and said, I can divorce Fred now because I have the goods on him. And he won't get my boys. I found the papers all about his income tax evasion. Now, according to Sutler, Sara gave the information to a private detective, and she felt protected by this. So then in 1991, Lawrence employed Yancey in the construction business. Lawrence knew Yancey to be a cocaine dealer. All these cocaine dealers, please pay attention, drugs were everywhere and running rampant. This was at a time when there was lots of drugs being funneled through Atlanta and lots of nightclubs where people were putting the drugs through there and all kinds of nefariousness was going on, okay? So anyway, Lawrence knew Yancey to be a cocaine dealer. Yancey asked Lawrence for $20,000, but Lawrence, who did not have $20,000, gave Yancey only $10,000 to purchase cocaine. Now, Lawrence said that he could resell the cocaine and make the remainder of the $20,000. Lawrence advanced him the money, but the plan failed. Now, Yancey then decided to produce counterfeit money in order to repay Lawrence. So he's sitting here printing up some fake money, thinking that's going to slide. Clearly, he wasn't that smart. So the United States Secret Service began investigating their activities. Now, Lawrence testified that he and Yancey would pass counterfeit money by going to nightclubs, buying drugs, and then reselling the drugs for legitimate money. Yancey and Lawrence eventually became aware of the Secret Service investigation. Now, Yancey introduced Lawrence to Tokars. Yancey and Lawrence informed Tokars of their counterfeiting activities also. And Tokars suggested that he could get the counterfeit money and distribute it in the Bahamas, but the two declined. Lawrence hired Tokars, but Yancey fled and was arrested in December of 1993. Now, the Secret Service then confronted Lawrence, but he denied his involvement in the scheme. I bet he did. Lawrence, accompanied by Tokars, agreed to go to the Secret Service office where Lawrence took a polygraph test. Tokars was told that Lawrence tested deceptive when asked about his involvement in passing off the counterfeit bills. Lawrence testified that he and Tokars then began conducting a money laundering business, and the two used Lawrence's construction business as a front and also incorporated several other businesses that they were using to launder their money. Lawrence solicited drug dealers to go into the nightclubs. Tokars advanced approximately $70,000 to Lawrence for operating expenses. Tokars discussed with Lawrence how he used offshore banks to help launder his money. Now, in late July or early August of 1992, Tokars asked Lawrence if he would kill somebody for him. In mid-September, Tokars asked Lawrence to kill his wife, Sara, because she wanted to divorce him and take everything. Now, in another discussion, Tokars told Lawrence that Sara wanted the house and all of his money. Lawrence advised Tokars to just let her have it, saying that he could always get it back. But according to Lawrence, Tokars stated that he had worked too hard. He went to school at night and she never did anything. All she ever did was spend his darn money. He wasn't having it. You're not getting that Skrilla, yikes. That's what he was thinking. So anyway, he said all she ever did was spend his money, and that wasn't going to happen. He wasn't going to give it to her. He'd kill her first. So during a later discussion, Lawrence asked about Tokars' children. Lawrence recalled that Tokars said, they'll be all right. That's what he said. The man asked him, what about your children? And he says, oh, they'll be all right. After you have their mom killed? These people are devils, clearly. They'll be all right. They'll get over it. That's what he said. Oh, my goodness. I cannot believe what I'm reading. He said, they'll be all right. They'll get over it. They're young. They will get over it. Lawrence testified that Tokars just wanted it done and said that she was putting pressure on him and he wanted to kill her. That was what he wanted to do. He wanted her dead. Crazy. So crazy. Now, Tokars first indicated that the murder should occur in his office because he could cover it up due to his influence in Atlanta. Lawrence would not agree. Tokars then decided it should happen in their home, so it would look like a burglary. Tokars offered to pay Lawrence $25,000 plus a portion of the life insurance proceeds. So in August of 1989, Tokars had increased the life insurance proceeds on Sara from $250,000 to $1,750,000. Tokars continued to pressure Lawrence to kill Sara, going so far as to threaten to destroy Lawrence's business if he would not comply. So now he's taking it all the way back to the slave days, because you know that's what they used to do in the slave days, right? If they wanted one of the slaves to do something and you wouldn't do it, they just threaten you. And I don't mean like, I mean certain things like, you know how the Karens back then would want the black men to have sex with them. And if they said no, they said, well, you know, I'll just tell my husband you raped me, right? I was walking through the woods and you just came out there and raped me. So that's how they would get them to comply. And likewise, the male slave owners, they would do the same thing to the black women. So that's all crazy. Threatened to destroy his business if he didn't comply. Lawrence testified that Tokars said that he did not care who did it, just as long as it got done. Kill her. Get rid of her. The kids will be okay. I need my money and I want her gone. That was his attitude. Now, Lawrence contacted Curtis Rower and offered him $5,000 to commit the murder. Now, you know he was so shady for that. He raggedy, where is Detective Kendra first 48 snaps when you need them? Okay? So, but here's how shady he was. Now, the man offered to pay him, Fred Tokars it is, offered to pay him $25,000 in cash plus some of the proceeds from the life insurance policy. So he's going to ask the other man to do it and only offer him $5,000. Mere peanuts. So he offered to pay him $5,000 to commit the murder, and Rower agreed. On Monday or Tuesday, prior to Thanksgiving of 1992, Tokars informed Lawrence that Sara would be going to Florida and that he wanted her killed when she came back. Tokars was scheduled to be in Alabama, meeting with a prisoner at the time, so he would have an alibi. Oh, he thought he had it all mapped out, honey. Yeah, kill her when she's coming back from Thanksgiving. I mean, after all, at least let her enjoy Turkey Day. It'll be her last meal, so he thought. Sara's father testified that Sara and the two children drove to Florida and arrived on the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, and that Fred Tokars flew into Tampa the same day. Now, Tokars returned home on Saturday and requested that Lawrence meet him the next day. Lawrence met Tokars at his law office, and Tokars informed Lawrence that Sara had already left Florida and would arrive in Atlanta around 8 or 9 p.m. Tokars checked into a Montgomery hotel and called his answering service to leave the number where he could be reached in case of an emergency. Now, that's where he probably messed up, because you're going to just conveniently leave a number to be reached in case of emergency. Clearly, he knew there was going to be an emergency. Now, that same day, there were many phone calls involving telephones associated with Tokars, also with Lawrence, Sara's father, and the Montgomery Hotel. Now, the record demonstrates that Lawrence picked up Rower around 7 p.m. Rower was equipped with a sawed-off shotgun. Lawrence left Rower at the Tokars' residence and instructed him to kill a white female around age 40. That's the only description he gave? What if somebody else that was one of her friends or family just showed up? These people sound like some idiots. For them to have all this money, they clearly was stupid. Now, Lawrence drove to a neighboring subdivision to wait. About 2 hours later, Lawrence saw Sara's white 4Runner vehicle driving off the road. Rower got out of Sara's vehicle and ran toward Lawrence. They then drove to Atlanta because Rower wanted to buy some drugs. Rower testified that when Sara arrived home, he made her get back into her vehicle and leave to take him to Atlanta. Rower claims that they pulled over, that Lawrence had approached, and that Lawrence grabbed the gun, which went off. Please, that's how he's going to tell it. So the gun just went off? Right. Now, he stipulated testimony indicated that Sara died from a gunshot wound to the head, which was delivered from a distance of approximately 1 foot or less. Sara's 2 small children were in the vehicle at the time of the murder. Can you imagine those poor kids saying that? And he shot her in the head with a sawed-off. Oh my goodness, they had to be gruesome. So Wilbert Humphreys, a money launderer, was in custody in Montgomery, Alabama in November of 1992. Now, he was surprised to receive a visit from Tokars on the Sunday after Thanksgiving. Another suspicion. Why would you go visit somebody the day after or just days after Thanksgiving? Clearly, you're trying to establish an alibi. That was just so stupid. At the jail, Tokars asked Humphreys to sign some papers. Humphreys attempted to talk with Tokars about the case, but Tokars talked to me very brief, he said, like he was in a hurry for something. This meeting lasted only about 10 minutes. Honey, he didn't have time for small talk. You think he came there to see you and discuss your case? Clearly he didn't, honey. He just came there for you to sign those documents so he can have proof and receipts that he was nowhere near Atlanta when the crime occurred, that he paid for, by the way. Now, on the Monday following the murder, a cousin of Sara's, Mary Rose Taylor, contacted Sara's sister, Christine Ambrusco, asking her to find the papers of Tokars that Taylor had asked Sara to make a copy of. Taylor went to Ambrusco's house and found the documents, copied them, and delivered them to the police. Now, these records reflected offshore bank accounts in the Bahamas and a Class B licensed bank issued by Montserrat. Now, Ambrusco testified that Sara requested that she keep the documents in a safe place and give them to the police if anything happens to her. See, this is all the part that Fred, he doomed her up close with a shotty. That's ruthless. Let me tell you something. This is all so interesting because Fred obviously didn't think Sara was as smart as she was. Clearly, she had enough sense to get those the paperwork, and give it to someone else and have copies made and tell them to go straight to the police if anything happens to her. So she already knew he was no good. He was likely going to try to have her killed. That's a shame. That's my gun, DOH. So anyway, according to Ambrusco, Sara wanted to divorce Tokars, but she was concerned that he would take the children. Ambrusco also said that Sara was very scared and intimidated. Now, according to Sara's sister, Gretchen Ambrusco Schaefer, after the murders, Tokars appeared very anxious, and he was making loud noises, kind of moaning and saying, "I'm so afraid, I'm so scared," in a loud tone of voice, very nervous appearing. Now, during a conversation with his mother and Schaefer, Tokars said that he did not want to help the police because he did not want them to look into his business dealings. Now, that's already sounding real crazy right there. You're going to say you don't want them looking into your business dealings, but your wife just got murdered in front of your kids. That should be the only thing that you're focused on and thinking about. So on December the 6th, Tokars, in the presence of counsel, was interviewed by the police. During the interview, Tokars admitted that his clients were criminals. And he specifically mentioned Mason because of Klein's murder and the arrest of Brown and the murder of Brown's brother. Tokars said that Mason and Klein were partners in the Parrot Club and that Mason owned diamonds and pearls. Tokars also admitted that he assisted Mason in incorporating the Parrot Club and that he represented Mason in a number of civil suits. Tokars further admitted that Sara had previously hired an attorney to seek a divorce. Later that evening, with Tokars' consent, police and federal agents searched Tokars' residence and seized Tokars' calendars for 1988, 89, and 90. Lawrence was arrested on December the 12th for writing bad checks. He was questioned about Sara's murder, but denied any involvement. Lawrence was released, but then was charged for writing another bad check. Why is he writing all these bad checks? Didn't Fred pay him the money that he's supposed to pay for killing this woman? And at the end of the day, do you see how he threw them under the bus? Now he hired them to kill his wife. And then he's going to tell the police that they're criminals. And then talk about how somebody else that knew Brown turned up dead. So clearly trying to get them to take the fall. Queen, I know this off. However, did you see Kundis Fox News? They released some stuff about the laptop. No, I absolutely didn't, beloved. I didn't. But so that's all so crazy, right? Right. Screw to effing up my TV on this live. I'm sorry, Queen. You know how they get down, honey. General Louverture said straight demon. Yes, he was a demon. Now, while Lawrence was again in custody, a private investigator for Tokars questioned him about the murder. Now, on December the 20th, the police again interviewed Tokars regarding why he never previously mentioned his connection with Lawrence. Tokars claimed that he had discussed their corporations and that all of his business dealings with Lawrence were matters of public record. Tokars described Lawrence as a business partner, and he acknowledged that he met with Lawrence in connection with the Secret Service investigation of Yancey. Now, Tokars also mentioned that Mason was an ongoing regular client of his. The police arrested Lawrence and Brower on December 23rd of 1992. A police officer called Tokars at Sara's father's home to inform him of the arrest. Tokars simply said, okay. Sara's father, Dr. Ambrusco, recalled that Tokars had no reaction to the news. Following the call, Dr. Ambrusco asked Tokars to tell the family about Lawrence. In response, Tokars stated that he did not believe Lawrence was involved. He said he didn't believe he was involved. Neil Wilcox, Sara's brother-in-law, testified that during a conversation with Tokars later in the evening, he kept repeating to me that he was worried about the police making a deal. Tokars claimed that the police were using these guys to get him, and he was worried about the police making a deal for their testimony against him. Why would you be even thinking about that, worried or concerned about that if you hadn't done anything? Clearly, he was telling on himself. I mean, he's supposed to be an attorney and a former prosecutor. How dumb could he be? Now, on Christmas Eve, Tokars failed to go on a family outing to Busch Gardens. As time passed without contact from Tokars, Dr. Ambrusco became worried. He went to look for Tokars and found him unconscious in a hotel room. The police found a suicide note. Tokars survived the suicide attempt. Let me tell you all something. This is all so ridiculous because let me tell you why. First of all, the woman just died the day after Thanksgiving, right? And then already, right before Christmas, they're going on a trip, a family trip to Busch Gardens, her parents included. I mean, they got over her quick, fast, and in a hurry, right? Davida says exactly, very dumb. Yes. So who does this? So anyway, they found this suicide note on Christmas Eve that Fred Tokars wrote. Fred Tokars' unsuccessful attempt at suicide produced this note, which would later be used as a trial exhibit. It says, Dear Rick, Mike, Norma, Andy, and friends and family, I'm sorry for the pain and sorrow my lifestyle has inflicted upon you. I never wanted Sara or anyone to die or get hurt. I am a weak person, cannot stand the pain and sorrow any longer, so I want to end it. Last night, I was asked, how could you work with anyone who would do this or who could do this? And I had no answer. Please make sure my little Mike and Rick are taken care of. I love them so much. Yeah, so much that you had their mother slaughtered, massacred right in front of them. I love them so much. So did little Sara. Andy and mother Norma are the only two people who stood by my side to the very end. Without them, I would have died a long time ago. Oh, the pity party people. I took the lie detector test, and only because I knew that I was innocent. Ever since I took it, I wanted to die. There's just too much pain for me. even though I passed. So he passed the lie detector test. You know why he passed it, people? Cold-blooded killer, says Terry. Absolutely. That was complete cap. Yes, but do you know why he likely passed that lie detector test? I'm glad you asked. Because he's clearly a pathological liar. And pathological liars can always pass lie detector tests because they, in fact, have conditioned themselves to believe their own lies. So anyway, he says, even though I passed. Yesterday, little Ricky asked me who was the best person in Mom's family. I hesitated, and he said Johnny or Joni. I want Joni to take care of Rick and Mike. I want Andy to take care of my money for the education of all Tokars and Ambrisco children. Please make sure all the children have a chance to go to college. I want Andy to replace me as trustee for my mother because he is so strong and honest. He will be very good at that. This is the longest suicide note anybody ever wrote, I'm sure, in the history of suicides. So he goes on to say, I ask that all of my and Sarah's money go to college funds for the Tokars and Briscoe Wilcox kids. I also want to keep our house in Canada as it's my real beginning. Mike, Sarah, and Rick and the Wilcoxes love it. Please try to keep it for them as there is nothing like it. Please call Bob Brenner and tell him that I would love him and that I love him and have always admired him. Whale and Neil and Okie were also the best friends in the world. I'm sorry for not spending enough time with them. I just worked too hard. Has anybody ever seen a suicide note this long? Jasmine said suicide note and a will. Right. He went straight to the lake, says Judah Queen. Oh my goodness. This is so crazy. But let me continue. He says he couldn't spend enough time with them because he just worked too hard. Sarah really loved Christmas. So do what you need to do to make everyone happy. She really was very special to me. Sar won't ever know. I don't know who Sar is. I guess he was saying Sarah. Just put S-A-R. Now, I know your loss was bad, but mine was really worse. Every day, I felt like I was going to die without her. She was always great with everybody. The real pain comes from trying to help. The real pain comes from trying to help the miserable defend myself. There are people all over Atlanta, you know, and who know and love me. They know I would never hurt anybody. I really had it made, and I can't explain to you how hard it was to lose everything in one day. Mike and Rick have been sheltered from the press so far. Let them see everything and draw their own conclusions. They will see I can never hurt Sarah or anyone else. The press killed me. Please explain to my friends my weakness and let them know what happened. I can't live with all this pressure. I'm sorry for all the pain and suffering that I have caused everyone. But I love Sarah, never hurt her, and I know, and I have now died for her. He said, and I have now died for her. I love you, Sarah, Rick, and Mike. Give my judge's badge to little Ricky. Give my DA's badge to little Michael. Make sure they know how hard I worked for them both. That was a suicide essay. He actually started off with an opening statement. Yes, he did. No less, Karma, a whole thesis. I'm so done. I'm so done. The press have made me feel like a suspect. I shouldn't be. The torture has weakened me to the point where I can't take it anymore. I want to die. I'm very sad. No shites. If you're going to kill yourself. He sure put a lot of thought into this damn letter, okay? Oh, my goodness. And he's not done. He says, I want to die. I'm very sad. Please help my children, Norma, Andy, and my family. Oh, honey, how long was that? Okay? Anyway, that was real crazy. So when he went to trial, In 1994, Fred Tokars was convicted of racketeering and other federal felonies in federal court and was given 4 sentences of life without parole. And he was sent to a federal prison. Now, after his federal sentences were upheld on appeal, Tokars was put on trial before a jury in Georgia's Superior Court in January of that year for the murder of his wife, Sara. Now, the trial was televised on court TV. And on Saturday, March the 8th of 1997, the jury found Fred Tokars guilty of her murder. 4 days later, the same jury found that the state had proved beyond a reasonable doubt several aggravating circumstances permitting a death sentence, but nonetheless exercised its discretion to impose a life sentence on Tokars. The horrible murder of Sara Tokars, which cannot be sufficiently condemned, must not blot out our internal vigilance for liberty and justice. There are important civil liberty lessons to be learned here as a result of Fred Tokars' murder trial. First, the necessity exemption to hearsay, or the hearsay rule, was ballooned to allow the jury to hear a vast mass of hearsay and double hearsay testimony, highly damaging to the defendant concerning the marriage of Fred and Sara Tokars. Grieving relatives or angry friends of Sara's were the sources of most of this evidence. The Tokars trial proves that there is increasing danger that Americans will be prosecuted and punished on the basis of tattletelling. We had better be careful about any further relaxing of the rules of evidence, because basically the people who were testifying against him, that was just hearsay. You know, hearsay is not supposed to be admissible in court. So that's all they were doing, is snitching, basically tattletelling. They said they didn't have any hardcore evidence. This is apparently what Ted's attorney was saying. Now, second, he says, the death penalty is a very expensive and very arbitrary procedure. Prosecutors use it for political purposes. Death penalty cases are now tried on the basis of prosecution testimony coming from jailhouse informants, prostitutes, drug dealers, and murderers. So basically unethical people who have poor credibility. Now, all claiming that the defendant made breathless confessions of guilt to them. Sometimes the family members of a victim may hijack a public prosecution and transform it into a private vendetta under the guise of the victim's rights. Now, the prosecution is now allowed to produce a scripted film to be shown to the jury prior to deciding the sentence. Victims' rights are now used to mask vindictiveness. Victims' rights are becoming a smokescreen to advance the agenda of the law and order elements. And the third thing he said was, every day prosecutors do more to help criminals than all the liberals and defense attorneys could ever dream of doing. In the Tokars case in Cobb County, or the Cobb County DA, Tom Sharon, ordered the fiendish murderer, liar, and habitual criminal Eddie Lawrence, a hands-on killer of Sara Tokars, with sweetheart deals that will permit him to be released from prison and live in the witness protection program. How many other prosecution witness criminals received leniency in exchange for giving testimony that incriminated Tokars or people like him? Some limits need to be placed on the unlimited discretionary power of the prosecutors to grant favors to government witnesses or informers. I agree with this. I absolutely agree with this. Let me tell you why this is all bad news. Do you know how many people are willing to lie, cheat, and steal just so they can get a sweet deal, so they can get out early, get some time knocked off of their sentence? Oh, yes, they will lie on people and say, yeah, they told me in the jailhouse confession that they did it. They said they hired somebody. Well, they told me this, that, and the third. These people lie all the time. There are so many numerous instances of prosecutorial misconduct because prosecutors do these things for political reasons. They're trying to establish their careers. So they do all kinds of nefarious tactics. And a lot of times they know these people are lying. They don't care. They just want to win the case by any means necessary. Okay? Because as far as I'm concerned, a person should not be convicted unless you have absolute conclusive evidence, facts, receipts, and proof. This is how Bill Cosby ended up in prison. They didn't have any DNA. They didn't have any hardcore evidence. All they had was she said, he said. That's it. And hearsay is not supposed to be even admissible. So how do you get somebody sentenced to all these years in prison on the hearsay? You don't have any fingerprints. You don't have any recordings. You don't have anything, no confessions. And you get people that are crooks and criminals who clearly can't be trusted because they're on their way to jail. So of course they want to get as little time as possible. So what you think they're going to do? Make up stuff. They don't care. Yes, absolutely, Dara, like Obama. Absolutely. She knew she was sending innocent people to prison. She didn't care. She was just trying to win. Lee Hart said, Queen, you did say deal Cosby, LOL. I did. Well, you know who I'm talking about. Okay, so that's crazy. So anyway, let me continue. Now they say the fourth thing is, the Tokars case reminds of the role that race plays in death penalty cases. You see, the victim, now I want y'all to pay attention. The victim was white and from an affluent white family that wanted a death sentence. It was inconceivable that a black family or a poor white family would have had the input into prosecutorial decision-making that Sara's family had. This is true. This is all true. Finally, the jury verdict giving Tokars a life sentence was an enormous defeat for Tom Sharon. He gambled a massive expenditure in taxpayer monies on the jackpot of a death sentence, and he lost. It was Sharon's folly, Sharon's fiasco, Sharon's flop. Now, despite his prodigious efforts, Sharon could not even convince a panel of 12 death penalty supporters to vote to kill Tokars. Perhaps as much as $1 million of taxpayers' funds was wasted, even though, as Sharon knew, the defendant was already serving 4 life sentences without parole. And even though Sharon had extended excessive leniency to one of Sara's actual killers and had been unable to convict the other actual killer, that's what he wasn't able to do. Couldn't even convict the second person. Now, however, Sharon will suffer no adverse political consequences because there was thunderous applause. He will simply remind people that at the least, he tried to obtain a death sentence. And this, in the state, no prosecutor or politician ever lost an election by supporting capital punishment. So clearly, that's why he didn't want to give him the death sentence. So that's the start of Fred Tokars. Now, he was involved in all of these nefarious activities. And let me just tell you something. It was his greed that was his undoing. He was so worried about his wife divorcing him and taking everything. Now, he knew that she knew some things about him. He probably didn't know exactly how much she knew. And I'm sure she had threatened him a time or two. But with that all being said, if he just given her the money, just divorced her and let her take the house and the stuff, just like his friend told him, he could have still been doing what he was doing. But see, greed is always the undoing of those who love and worship money. That's always what does them in. Always. General Louverture says 7 deadly sins. Absolutely. We talked about the 7 deadly sins on my broadcast on More Than Meets the Third Eye today. So that's just real crazy. But there you have it, people. But hold on, because clearly there's more. Now, not only that, Fred Tokars, as someone said, yes, he died in prison. Fred Tokars, attorney, dies in prison 28 years after arranging his wife's murder. Now, former Atlanta attorney Fred Tokars, who arranged the murder of his wife in 1992, died in a federal prison. His longtime defense attorney confirmed this. Now, Jerry Froelich said Tokars' brother was notified of his death by a prison chaplain, and Froelich said that he had not been told of the precise cause of death, although he said Tokars had a form of multiple sclerosis that had left him unable to walk for the past decade. See how God don't like ugly? And that was in 2020. That was just last year, May the 13th. Okay? Tokars died after developing a fever last week. Developing a fever? Wonder if he got anything, like a jab. I'm just curious. I feel like we're watching a movie. What a story. Thank you, Dara. Now, also, let's not forget about Fred's children, Mike and Ricky, who were young children at the time, and they witnessed their mother dying, right? Well, guess what? Sad thing is, one of the sons is also dead. Died at the age of 31. And guess what? He died April of 2020, a month before his father died. Mike Tokars, boy who witnessed mother's murder, set up by evil father Fred Tokars, has died. Says Mike Tokars, the son of Fred Tokars and slain mother Sara Tokars, passed away in California. AJC reports that Mike Tokars, who was 31 years old, was the young boy who witnessed his mother's death. He developed a blood clot behind his knee earlier that year, and after undergoing treatment in California, a clot broke loose and traveled to his lungs. He passed away from a pulmonary embolism. That's so sad. I know his life was clearly hell after all that he saw as a kid. Now, Mike, a Columbia University journalism graduate, once wrote a story for the AJC about the death of his mother, although he ultimately asked for the content to be removed. He spent years trying to earn a living as a writer and musician in New York and had recently moved to California, where some family members lived. He moved there where his family members lived for a fresh start. But Mike never could quite get over the tragedy that he witnessed as a child. This is what one of his aunts named Chrissy said. She said, despite the family's best efforts to provide him with a solid upbringing after his mother's death, he just never could get over it. She says he struggled his entire life after that. He was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder and depression. He was searching to find happiness through his music and his writing. She says, I think Fred stole his happiness from him. So that's just all so sad. What a tragic end to such a nefarious story. Oh, damn, blood clot in the knee. Wow. Yep. Who does this? Who does this? He needs an animal. So that's also sad, people. That is also sad. His father was a no-good bastard. Yes, General Louverture, he sure was. I mean, he could have just divorced that woman and given her some money for the kids or whatever. But no, like I said, greed was his undoing. He was so determined. And you heard what he said. He said, she didn't do anything but spend up my money. I'm the one that worked. I worked so hard. Doing illegal activities, that's what he calls working hard. You was a whole prosecutor, but you out here doing drug deals. You out here laundering money for drug dealers and telling them how to do the drugs and all that. He clearly was just a thug in the streets. But I want y'all to pay attention to something, people. What you should learn from this story, if you learn nothing else, let this serve as a cautionary tale. You see, Black people who go out here and sell drugs, they're known as thugs and menaces to society, are they not? But you see, when you have members of the Hellman's crew doing the same thing, and they wear suits and ties when they do it, mind you, they're businessmen. And it is only until they go out here and murder somebody to keep their stacks and their bands, their racks, their Skrilla, that they are then demonized and considered a thug like everybody else. But there's lots of them. And they want to act like Black people are the ones out here thugging it up. No. They're thugging it up too, just in a different manner. That's all. And as you can see, he was the one schooling the Black people on how to hide their money and how to money launder and how you're not supposed to keep your drugs and your cash in the same place. He was giving them notes. Okay? Who do you think they learned it from? Pay attention. And also with the case that I did of Jamila Davis, they called her the Pink Wolf of Wall Street. And they clearly tried to paint her as the mastermind when she was doing that mortgage fraud or whatever. But the men that she was working with, they're the ones that taught her. But of course, she got 12 years because she's a woman in Black. And they only got like 18 months. Okay? Yes, absolutely. Louise says they hide their shite. Absolutely. General Louverture says white privilege. Absolutely. And you already know, if there had been a Black person that did all those things that Fred Tokars did, they would have absolutely gotten the death penalty. Okay? He was allowed to live, like they said, because he was rich and affluent. So that all being said, I'm going to conclude this broadcast, people, but don't go anywhere. Hold on to your seatbelts because I'm coming right back with another nefarious story. Now, this one is juicy. It's about a Black woman who married, she was a socialite, married a rich white man. And when he got tired of her, well, you know the rest. So I wish I could talk to you, but mom's the word, sis. Okay? Well, send me an email, beloved. Send me an email, A.B. the Great. So with that all being said, I'm going to conclude this broadcast. Everyone, please like and share the video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Click the notification bell. Click the word all. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at QueenAhmadiyyah. Also on Instagram at divine_goddess_27. Twitter at dgoddess27. Brighton and Patreon at QueenAhmadiyyah. And so I will be right back. The next live starts in 2 minutes. Till next time, Rose, I will talk to you all again soon. Peace.